Hello. It's such a pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for having me. So as she mentioned, I currently work at an anthropology museum, but I used to be in this world and I miss it, I love it. I also noticed that there was a moon tree talk before me, and so I looked up a little bit about the tree we have in Tucson by the Flandreau Science Center. The seeds flew on Apollo 14. It was planted in 1976, and in 2015 it nearly died. Apparently all of the main branches were dead, and it was home to a large colony of carpenter bees. But I went and checked on it last week, and it is alive and well. Beautiful sycamore. Okay, so today I'm going to start with some basic background information about the Lunar and Planetary Laboratory and the relevant papers at the University of Arizona Library's special collections. Then I'm going to talk briefly about my experience working with the papers of Peter Smith, the primary investigator for the Phoenix Mars mission, and how that project informed the OSIRIS-REx project. Then I'll wrap up with a bit about a moon exhibit and events that we had for the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. So the University of Arizona Library's special collections houses a rich array of primary resource material of significant historical and cultural importance. Established in 1958, Special Collections supports research, teaching, and learning by providing access to unique materials for students, faculty, scholars, and the public. The collection includes rare books, manuscripts, photographs, maps, and other archival materials documenting the history and culture of the American Southwest, Mexico, and Borderlands region. Special Collections also offers outreach services and hosts exhibits, lectures, and events to engage the community with its resources. Among the most notable holdings are the History of Science and the Lunar and Planetary Laboratory collections. The History of Science collection comprises rare books, manuscripts, and other materials that chronicle the evolution of scientific thought and discovery from antiquity to the modern era. This collection is particularly strong in the fields of astronomy, physics, and the life sciences, featuring works by prominent scientists and scholars. The Lunar and Planetary Laboratory collection is a cornerstone of the University of Arizona's contributions to space science. Founded in 1960 by Dr. Gerard P. Kuiper, LPL has been at the forefront of planetary research and exploration. The collection includes extensive documentation of the laboratory's involvement in major space missions, including the Apollo missions to the moon and numerous robotic missions to other planets. These materials provide invaluable insights into the history of space exploration and the scientific advancements that have shaped our understanding of the solar system. Researchers can access mission reports, photographs, data sets, and personal papers of key scientists involved in these groundbreaking projects, making it a crucial resource for the study of planetary science and the history of space exploration. So back in 2018, I participated in the To Boldly Preserve conference, where I gave a talk titled Archiving the Pioneers of Planetary Science. And I really loved how it brought individuals from different fields together, much like today. I'm so often in a silo with other archivists and librarians, and I find it really refreshing to hear all of the different perspectives from everyone, so thank you. So this next section will cover a little bit about the talk that I gave at To Boldly Preserve. So I cut my teeth on the papers of Peter Smith, which unprocessed was over 150 cartons. Peter Smith, among many other things, was the primary investigator of the Phoenix Mars mission, which was a $420 million NASA-funded mission that discovered water ice on Mars. Way to go. It was mostly composed of computer files or burned digital materials that had been printed out and organized in filing cabinets. So think PowerPoints, reports, specifications, schematics, and grant proposals. The abbreviations in this collection nearly killed me. A typical folder is labeled 98 MVAX SSI IPR. So 98 is short for the mission, Mars Surveyor Program 1998. MVAX is an integrated payload and stands for Mars Volatiles and Climate Survey, of which SSI is a specific instrument, the Surface Stereo Imager. And then IPR is what the contents of the folder actually is. And it could be one of 3 IPRs. an informal peer review, or an internal peer review, or an integration peer review. So without a science background, this was difficult for me. So usually, abbreviations are carefully laid out, except when it comes to project management jargon, which rarely makes it into the keys of abbreviation. I had one folder titled KO, which took me the longest to figure out. So any guesses? What does KO mean? Yes, kickoff. So I'm working away one day, and I open a report, and it says, this package is controlled by the International Trafficking in Arms Regulations and may not be transferred to a foreign entity. This kind of scared me, because I didn't know what this was. So as it turns out, any system that launches a spacecraft can also be used as a weapon. So then I started paying really close attention, and lots of different restrictions came up. So ITAR is apparently somewhat passé. Now the blanket term that covers ITAR and other restrictions is export controlled. And export control sounds sort of nice, like climate control. And it's possible that I glimpsed this term on a report and it just failed to conjure any sort of alarm. So export control is somewhat broad restriction for anything that can't be shared with a non-citizen. Another common restriction in modern science collections is proprietary information or trade secrets. Many space exploration projects have subcontracts with corporate vendors such as Lockheed Martin. And in talking to scientists, I've learned that some of the most sensitive information that they keep hidden is salary information for the members of the private sector that end up in the grant reports. Like that's something they do not want to share accidentally. So another really big risk to archiving these collections is the fact that teams are rapidly assembled and disassembled on timetables dictated entirely by funding constraints associated with grants. This means that the day after the mission comes to a close, nobody is left to work with archivists and historians. Data is carefully deposited, but oftentimes there is a world of contextualizing information and project management aspects that aren't accepted or appropriate for the data systems. The collaborative model to archive OSIRIS-REx relieved much of the difficulties I encountered with processing the LPL collections. I assume many of you are familiar with the OSIRIS-REx mission, but as a brief introduction, the acronym stands for Origins, Spectral Interpretation, Resource Identification, Security, Regolith, Explorer. And let me tell you, Microsoft Word fights the camel case in Rex tooth and nail, and I even have one that made it into my talk. The mission seeks to answers to the questions that are central to the human experience. Where did we come from? What is our destiny? Asteroids, the leftover debris from the solar system formation process, can answer these questions and teach us about the history of the sun and planets. So OSIRIS-REx's key science objectives include returning and analyzing a sample of Bennu's surface, mapping the asteroid, documenting the sample site, measure the orbit deviation caused by non-gravitational forces, and to compare observations at the asteroid to ground-based observations. So on September 24th, 2023, the Tucson science enthusiast community celebrated the successful return of a sample from asteroid Bennu. Years before this triumphant touchdown, the project team diligently and intentionally preserved critical project management and contextual information associated with the mission, underscoring the monumental effort required to reach, map, and harvest a celestial body. This case study explores the archiving of born digital materials through a unique partnership involving cross-campus collaboration at an academic institution, archiving in tandem with an active NASA mission and its personnel, and the project is designed to serve as a model for future endeavors at the University of Arizona. This was crucial because if we had waited, there would not have been staff or grant funds to work with special collections, and additional contextualizing documentation may not have entered into a trusted digital repository for long-term preservation. So beginning in the fall of 2018, the meeting started and a plan was formed for the OSIRIS-REx team to fund a graduate assistantship for a master's student in information resources and library science to work on the project. The project was designed to be resource light so that similar results for other projects could be archived without funds. We leveraged existing library platforms, mainly the DSpace campus repository, which is a constantly improving staple in the library world. One of the grounding principles of the collaboration revolved around Osiris-Rex's commitment to citizen science. Citizen science initiatives. In an interview with Ira Flato of PBS, Dante Loretta stated that he believes that engaging people in scientific exploration enhances the mission's outcomes and fosters a deeper understanding and appreciation of space science among the general public. Some of the citizen science components of the mission included volunteers tagging features on Bennu through CosmoQuest. I spent an afternoon circling boulders at my computer and was rewarded with an awesome certificate of appreciation. So at times, the library did have to push back on some of these sort of democratizing ideas based on resources and usually surrounding the duplication of assets with large data footprints. So instead of ingesting all documentation into the campus repository, we negotiated pointing to resources in the small bodies node of NASA's Planetary Data System, or PDS, instead of cross-duplicating it. So this project was an exceptionally rich learning experience for the student. This is in large part because they reported to both teams and split their time across campus. Most archival collections are processed after the death of the donor. So it's exhilarating to actively work with the content creators and to be able to ask questions like, what does KO mean? The student was permissioned into the active Osiris-Rex project wiki, and as phases progressed, new materials were authorized for archiving. So the students scraped content from the wiki, created and named PDF files, and then uploaded batches of PDFs into the campus repository and created descriptive metadata and hierarchical clusters of materials. They also created a classic archival finding aid that also pointed to the full text digital files in the campus repository. So based on the students' background in the humanities and previous scholarship, they were also given a role in Bennu nomenclature, which was creating lists of mythical birds with citations for use in naming Bennu features. Working with born digital materials involves many risks, but also rewards. Paper-based materials take up physical space, so if staff departs, the filing cabinets remain. Born digital materials are at far greater risk and require more resources and trained staff to manage them, but they are bursting with potential for ease of access and future use in digital humanities projects, such as text mining. The Osiris-Rex project has a robust online presence, a dynamic website, multiple blogs, and lots of social media accounts. We used a fee-based product already in use by the library called Archivist, and an end-to-end web archiving tool, which is an end-to-end archiving tool created by the Internet Archive. So that's the makers of the Wayback Web. So we crawled or archived the following assets: the project homepage, asteroidmission.org, Dante Loretta's personal blog, and social media including Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So next I'm just going to walk you through a few screenshots of some of the project outcomes. Special Collections puts finding aids in two places. This is a statewide compiling, so any institution in Arizona can post finding aids to Arizona Archives Online. And then this is a look at their archive space finding aid. And so you can toggle through the different series. There's a few things that aren't born digital, like memorabilia. There's an Osiris-Rex chapstick in the collection. And then this is the landing page in the campus repository. And you can see that the clusters of collections, so multiple files with the same metadata, kind of relying on file names for access. And this is the landing page for the web archiving piece. So each one is the different website. And then if you open one of them, it shows a calendar with the dates of when the website was crawled. And then this would be an example of the archived homepage. And last week, asteroidmission.org already had the pink security flag because it doesn't have the HTTPS. And so 5 years is sometimes the end of life for web projects. So they are incredibly at risk and incredibly valuable. All right, and now to the moon. So this image actually has a moon in it. Right over here is Earth and Earth's moon as imaged by the OSIRIS-REx spacecraft as it took off to Bennu. So contemporaneously to the OSIRIS-REx project, I got to curate an exhibit in special collections to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the exhibit and many collaborators, then go into some depth about one artifact, and then talk about the events associated with the exhibit. So I worked with English professor Christopher Kokinos, who wrote an extensive lunar timeline that wove together cultural and scientific milestones. I drew heavily on the collection of Ewan Whitaker, a lunar mapping expert, picked from rare books purchased under President Schaefer in the 1970s. I borrowed an old large format camera and a gorgeous early telescope from the Optics Museum. I highlighted important books printed by the UA Press and borrowed lunar video games from the Learning Games Archive Initiative and was loaned a wonderful painting from the UA Museum of Art. But the star of the show is an artifact loaned from the Lunar and Planetary Laboratory, which was used to make a rectified lunar atlas in the early 1960s. The premise is basically to correct for the distortion that happens when you make a flat photograph of a round object. So I'm going to let the former director of LPL, Tim Swindle, explain what the object means, and don't forget to check out his moon shirt.
In the early 1960s, we had great images of the moon through telescopes, but there was still a problem. Because looking at the moon through a telescope from Earth is like looking at a face nose on. If you want to know what the inside of the ear looks like, you have a pretty hard time. For that, you'd have to walk around to the side and look from, well, overhead in the case of the moon. So University of Arizona scientists came up with a clever way to get around that. They projected the best images that they had taken from telescopes in southern Arizona onto this white globe, and then took a camera and moved around the globe, taking pictures of what it would look like from overhead. In this way, they were able to take out the distortion that you would see in many of the features. For example, Mare Crisium appears to be elongated north-south when you are looking from a telescope on Earth, but when you actually look at it from overhead, you see that the elongation is east-west. University of Arizona scientists were able to see views of the moon that would have been otherwise hidden.
Okay, so what you can't tell from this video is that the precision hemisphere is cast metal, roughly 3 inches thick, and that it weighs something like 300 pounds. So the next video shows the journey of the artifact out of its old shipping crate and into new furniture and the process of troubleshooting the projection. And beware the silly music. So this exhibit was folded into a series of cross-campus events titled Moonfest. And my exhibit opened on the 50th anniversary of Apollo 11, along with the major yearly LPL open house. Flandra, the planetarium, had tours, and there were tours of the Mirror Lab on campus. And Special Collections had 539 visitors that day, which was the record for any one of our events. And we also hosted a night of lunar poetry and had a lecture from Gerard Kuiper's biographer and UA Press author, Derek Sears. And with that, I would love to take your questions.